Andrè, earlier you mentioned, or before the podcast really, you mentioned that the university years was a very formative period of time for you, even in script writing as well. Can you guide us a little bit through the process on that and your thought process mainly?
I tend to be a very people's person. I like being with people. I feel I'm a very social person. I tend to be shy at the beginning when we get to know each other, but then eventually my real self comes out, and I like being with people. Like during my university years, there was the outbreak of the COVID pandemic, and I felt it was a very trying time. So they were very trying times for me, because obviously most of the island went on lockdown. So what I felt were they should have been the most fun years of my life, university life, going to parties, making new friends, starting in a completely different course, having the opportunity to get to know people. It was very, very restricted and limited. So that time was very challenging, especially also because most of the things that I loved doing could not happen. It was the first time in 6 years that at Christmas we could not do panto. And it was it was like I missed part of my identity. I was a people's person, I was social, I valued my friends a lot and meeting with them, I valued acting. Suddenly some parts that were, the most predominant features of myself, I had this restriction, and this was a pandemic. I was locked at home. I'm an only child, so I did not have siblings with me in the household. My parents both worked, and they had to go to work. I was having online lectures at home. I used to text some of the friends that I had already made in my course, but it's obviously different seeing, I remember we used to take pictures of each other on Zoom and send them to each other, hello, I'm seeing you, which was stupid, but that was the only way that we could see each other at the time. And, it was very trying. I was very productive. I had time to write. And, in that sense, it was very beneficial. But personally, I felt very sad during the pandemic and very lonely. And the moment that sort of everything was lifted, I was more than happy more than ever I compensated. I was going out every day. I was meeting so many friends. But yeah, I think it was formative in a way because it made me appreciate communication and connections more. And I think something that I heavily missed during the pandemic was being in someone's presence. Even if I make a video call with someone, I was speaking to someone, but I was not there in the presence of a person like we are now next to each other. And it shows even in my writing, as in when I reflect and I go back to things that I wrote during the pandemic, it shows how much I prioritized and how much I sort of spoke highly and highlighted this connection, this being in someone's presence. And it made me realize more than ever how much we need connections. We say that no man is an island, and I think the pandemic really proved it to me.
There is something special about being in the presence of someone, and actually you verbalize it quite well. Some might say, so I do some lectures as well, and the way that things are going, things are headed to online learning, and I think that is the future, and that is the way things are heading. But I can't help but appreciate the classroom environment. It's not about, so obviously doing online lectures and meetings, it's beneficial, it's quick and easy, and it's very convenient. However, I think we have to balance things out. I think that meeting always online or conducting, there has to be a blended approach. There is something about meeting in person which is not, it can't be achieved, that's my point of view, that can't be achieved through online. Because I have a similar experience, so obviously I had to, even scouts, we had to do online meetings and whatnot, and you still get the job done.
They're practical.
Yes. You get things done. But there is something about non-verbals which is blocked in online situations. I think it's beneficial. I think that is the way that the place that we're heading, and I think that even education should, not entirely, and not in every stage of education, especially at younger ages. But I think we need to promote a more blended approach rather than online only, for example, if we are headed in that direction.
And it also depends, for example, you're giving the example of education.
Yeah.
I also, for a time in my life, I used to teach English as a foreign language. And also during the pandemic, I used to do that online as well. I did it before COVID, I did it during COVID, I did it after COVID. And both from that experience as a teacher and from the experience of actually being taught as a university student, I can say that there is so much more to education than just the lectures, than just the lessons, than just the teacher giving information and the student passively receiving it.
Yeah.
In teaching English, we focus a lot on interactivity, on actually talking to other people in English. It's a class of mixed nationalities. They only have English in common.
Yeah.
So like it or hate it, that's the way they have to communicate. As in teaching English online, that could not happen. How could the students, when you're in a class, you're like, okay, so turn around, talk to the person next to you, and ask him what he did last weekend.
Yeah.
As in they're learning, they're speaking, they're listening. They couldn't do it online.
Yes.
And even me as a student, as in the things that I missed most weren't, the lectures, as in not saying that like the lectures are a very important part, and they still managed to get through. Through an online platform.
It gets the job done ultimately. So in terms of knowledge, there is the transfer of learning and the transfer of knowledge. That's for sure.
But actually, those side conversations, those discussions, even related to the topic. Sometimes you just go out of a lecture and you're like, I really agreed with that lecturer. No, I don't quite see it that way, and you learn. As in, you learn a lot, as in from other people, and just having that barricade of being alone, and being a bit more complicated to like talk to someone else. I think education suffers a lot because it's not that interactive when it comes to real life interactions.